Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by BadgerBlitz publisher John McNamara. John, good to see you as always, buddy.
Matt, it's good to see you too.
So this has been a rare occurrence of late, coming off back-to-back blowout wins. It's been a minute since we've seen that in Madison. John, we're just going to hop right into it. My question, I guess, to you to start is, what do you think the biggest reason behind, what's the biggest reason behind this offensive surge?
Great question. I think it's a number of different areas, but for me, it starts up front, right? And the improved play of the offensive line that obviously allows, the run game to improve. It gives time for Braden Locke. Beyond that, there's a couple things, they're playing, I think, at a little quicker pace. And obviously the sample size with Tyler Van Dyke was small. But if there's something, or, one of the many things I think Braden Locke brings to the table is, like we've heard about, the grasp of the offense. But also I think that with that grasp of the offense, it's allowing them to kind of push the tempo a little bit more. It's allowing them to maybe get a little bit more into what Phil Longo wants to do, in terms of what he's comfortable with and in terms of what, he's had success with. I also think that the decision to kind of pare that running back room down has certainly paid dividends at the top with Tyree Walker, who's coming off, two really solid performances. But to concentrate that a bit and to maybe allow a guy like Walker to get lathered up a bit. I mean, there are just some guys who need to take a couple hits, need to get that going, need to feel it a little bit before they start to churn on you. And I think that might be a big thing too, in terms of why the running game has been better, because they've pared it down. You don't have Chez Mellusi, but that has proven to be a pretty good decision by the coaching staff.
Walker reminds me of Moneyball in the way that he runs. And I like the way that you framed that as, you got to get a little lathered up. Yeah. It feels like he needs to get a couple pops in before he really gets going. I felt like Monty was the same way when he played. So played with the same style, played that downhill game. And I think that, with Chez leaving, it's in some ways allowed the dominoes to fall in a way that there seems to be now like a natural pecking order.
Right. And, with Walker, at the start of the year, it was, okay, give Chez Mellusi his series, then give Walker a series, give Yakimelli a series. And maybe that just wasn't the right mix for this group. Whereas now you're seeing that true, I don't know if you ever see like a true bell cow tailback anymore in college or in the NFL, but you have your primary guy now in Walker, who, like I talked about in the fall, during those Platteville practices, I said, this guy looks like Wisconsin's top running back. And that wasn't a knock on Mellusi. That was more of what Walker was able to do. And, talking to people, he was their strongest back in the spring. And I think he was their strongest back in the fall. And he got nicked up a little bit early in the season. I think he's nearing 100% or as close to 100% as you can be at this point in the, on the football calendar. But it's proving that this guy needs close to 20 carries a game, and the production has been there. So that balance, and however they came to that decision, I think has been a really good move for that Wisconsin offense.
I think it's also allowed for him to really get in sync with the offensive line. And we've seen that, especially obviously Joe Brunner is one who really had a standout game this past weekend. But I think a lot of those guys are blocking really well right now. Riley Mahlman it's graded out very well, I know, in PFF as well. And he's looked good. And I think that the offensive line has also been able to keep Braden Locke upright for a long time, and allowing him to really start pushing the ball downfield, which then makes defensive backs move backwards, which then opens up more running lanes for Tyree Walker. So sort of all works together in this idealized version of the air raid, which is a ground raid at this point because of how much they're running the ball, but you're still spreading them out and making those lanes available. But what's impressed me even more, though, is the Wisconsin's ability to stop the run, especially against Rutgers, who came in with a really strong running game. And I thought they would do okay, but not. I thought it was probably the strongest game they've played on defense this year, given the talent on the other side of the field. How did all of this happen, John?
I don't think it's all Jaheim Thomas, but I think a bulk of it is Jaheim Thomas. He wasn't good in Wisconsin's first 2-3 games, and then if you look at PFF for this last game against Rutgers, he was the highest graded guy that they had at 80.6. And I don't want to say he's starting to figure it out because he's a fifth year guy who's played in this system before, but I think he's starting to kind of figure it out. And he's a legit talent. What did he lead the SEC in tackles last year? So this was a guy that Wisconsin was ecstatic to get, that they made a huge effort to get a year ago to have on that 2023 roster. So with him playing better, I think specifically in the run defense, it's really had a positive impact on the entire unit. And again, up front, Wisconsin's never going to be great up front with this version of this roster, but I think that group is playing better. Elijah Hills has been a really pleasant surprise for the staff. And again, that unit's not dominant, but I think they're doing enough to allow those linebackers to make plays, because I do think that's a talented group, specifically on the inside with Jaheim Thomas. You've seen an uptick in Jake Chaney's play, and you're seeing more of Allegro. You're seeing more of Tackett Curtis. I think all those things have been positive. So kind of figuring out what the snap should be, figuring out the rotation, and then the improved play from Jaheim Thomas, I think, has been pretty crucial these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, Allegro's been awesome too. When he's out there, he's making impact plays.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that Fickell, liked about him as a high school player, as a true freshman, and now into a sophomore year as his role continues to expand. So he's bringing a lot of that. He seems to have a tackle for loss in almost every game that he plays. And that's huge.
He's 24 snaps against Rutgers.
Yeah.
You could argue that he deserved more, but he's not a guy that should be in the 8, 9, 10 range. He should be in the 25, 30 range. And I think he's inching closer to that. But credit Mike Tressel if that's a decision that he made on his own or a collective decision. Have a rotation there, because your next two guys can play at a pretty high level, and that allows Thomas and Chaney to come off the field a little bit. I think that's healthy for the entire group, especially as you get into the bulk of the Big Ten season right now.
Yeah. Well, let's flip over to the recruiting side of things. As 2025 class has been wrapped up now for a while. 2026, though, coming into more focus. Badgers already have one quarterback commitment, but they put out a pretty big offer this week into Ryan Hopkins. And I think that is notable for a couple of reasons. First, I think it very clearly indicates that they're going to take two quarterbacks in this cycle. And B, that they're going after a kid who is in, one of the top high school football conferences of the country and seems to be a real gamer. And I'm curious, John, as to, what should we make of this offer?
For the reasons you talked about, man, I think it is significant. And, I asked him that about, does this offer, did they talk to you about already having a commitment in that 2026 class? He said, yeah, they did. They brought that up, and they said that it will not impact the way that they recruit me. So, Wisconsin has traditionally taken one scholarship quarterback in each recruiting cycle. I think there's been a few cases where they've taken two. But it's rare, right? So, and that, goes beyond Luke Fickell. That goes into, Paul Christ and Brett Bielema and what they wanted to do. From purely my perspective, 2026 makes perfect sense to take two quarterbacks. And if Jaron Mock is one of them, great. But, if he's not, if he wants to be the only guy, then I think maybe you move forward. They're thin at the position right now. I think they'll probably look in the portal again, regardless of how this season plays out, regardless of if Tyler Van Dyke comes back. But, you look at 25 and, Landon Locke is coming off a serious leg injury. 2026 to me just seems like the right time to try to add more talent to that position group. And if it makes a current commit upset, then it just kind of is what it is. I think that's the right move to make that move to add more quarterbacks in that class. And the offer, would kind of indicate that.
Yeah. So, I think that the other sort of big news on the recruiting trail of late has been Nolan Davenport getting an offer from Michigan. They seem to be pushing for his flip pretty hard. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried should Badger fans be about Davenport potentially flipping to a Big Ten rival?
Yeah, these type of things are fluid, right? And on the surface, you get, the answers of, he's committed, he's good, but I think you kind of dig a little deeper. And, the people I talk to, I think Michigan feels like he's a kid that they can get on campus now. Does that happen? Kind of remains to be seen. What would happen if he does pop up in Ann Arbor? That kind of remains to be seen as well. Obviously, Michigan's coming off a national title, and that's a position group that they've done very well with. So, anything can kind of happen in recruiting. This is very, I guess I would say, just blanket wise, this is very normal. This is not something that Wisconsin, has not experienced, or something that they've tried on their own, right? To get a committed kid to pop up on campus for a game day visit. So again, pretty normal, kind of par for the course. These things are fluid. I guess I would just stress that, where one thing could be true this afternoon, another thing could be true tomorrow morning, right? I mean, you're dealing with 17-year-old kids, and not to say that Nolan is going to make a decision this way or he's going to make a decision the other way. We'll just kind of have to see how things play out. But, when you get a committed kid to come on campus, that's a big deal. And, dominoes can start to kind of, move forward, when that kind of stuff happens.
Well, let's move to high school football in the state of Wisconsin for the weekend. I think there's arguably the matchup of the year. Marquette heading to Mukwonago this weekend. John, are you going to be there? Because I think a lot of eyes within the state will definitely be there.
Yeah, if I can get a ticket, I guess, or flash the press pass, I'd like to be there. But yeah, like you talked about, Matt, I mean, you could make a case that those are the two best teams in Division I, the two best teams in the state. And, a handful of other schools would have an argument in that, but that's going to be a really good battle there. I think that, I was talking to some people just kind of follow high school football in the state, and, they love high school football. And I said, look, there's some undefeated teams. There's Franklin, there's Verona. But in D1, if I had to pick, Marquette might be my pick. I mean, they look tough. They got a really good running back in Tommy Novotny that his recruitment's a little more quiet right now than I would have anticipated, but he's not a kid that puts a bunch of stuff out there on Twitter. I know that someone in Wisconsin certainly checked in on a 2026 running back, but they're the defending state champs. I think that, the title is probably going to run through them this year, as well as teams fight to get to Camp Randall. I think they're a really good team who's playing well at the right time.
And they are elite on special teams.
Man, you had to sneak that in, didn't you? Yeah, Eric Schmidt. I mean, he's really good at what he does, and I think
he's a weapon. Like he's absolutely a weapon. And if you have it, use it.
Yeah, and their game was on TV, and then I saw someone at my daughter's soccer game the next day, like, yeah, they said they had a Wisconsin commit at Marquette. I was like, yeah, Schmidt, that kid can do a lot. They expect him to come in and compete for either the kickoff job, or maybe he punts, maybe he kicks field goals. I mean, that is truly a weapon to have. And you've seen with Wisconsin, not necessarily in their specialists, but in the return game, that kind of stuff, when it glares in the wrong way. So, I mean, to have that all put to bed and feel good about that helps guys like Matt Mitchell sleep better at night when you have those things taken care of.
I mean, Hunter Wohler dropped and then recovered a punt this past weekend, and they were just putting him back there to fair catch him. Didn't even do that. That's an ongoing problem, it seems, for the program. I guess Tyrell Henry will be back again this week, according to the depth chart. He's back as PR1, but who knows?
Well, okay, not to segue too far, but it brings me back to Paul Chryst when he stuck Jack Dunn back there, and people complained, well, why don't you put a guy back there that can make plays? Put who's the kid who put Ingram back there? He can make plays.
Aaron Cruikshank.
Put Cruikshank there, right? But look, Paul Chryst is probably right. When you put Jack Dunn there, he is not going to advance the ball an inch. But 999 times out of 1,000, he's going to secure the football and put your offense on the field. And credit to Paul Chryst, he was right in that situation, because I know that there were people there screaming for putting a playmaker back there. Get someone that can advance the ball. But ultimately, all you really want to do is put your offense on the field. That's it.
You can't advance the ball without having the ball.
Correct. Jack Dunn. If Jack Dunn's out there, Maybe he's got another year of eligibility left.
Salute to you, Jack Dunn, for fair catching. I think having a 100% fair catch rate, and
probably,
but I mean fair catch completion rate. Like,
yes.
I think he returned a couple, like for like 5-6 yards, but I think he was like if he was calling for a fair catch, he was catching them. So good for him. And good for all of you for tuning in here to Badger Blitz TV. We appreciate everyone coming here, subscribing to the YouTube page. If you haven't already, head on over to BadgerBlitz.com. Best information and message boards anywhere in the known Badger universe. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you in the den.